The title of this book is Christian Paganism. We are now in part 14 of this book. We are in part 14. It is written by our beloved brother, Frank Vaula. We are in chapter 2. Chapter 2. We continue in chapter 2. Basilica, Romanesque, and Gothic church building are a human attempt to duplicate that which is heavenly and spiritual. In a very real way, the church building throughout history reflect man's quest to sense the divine with his physical sense. While being surrounded by a body can certainly turn a person's heart toward God, he desires so much more for his church than an aesthetic experience. By the 4th century, the Christian community had lost touch with those heavenly reality and spiritual intangible that cannot be perceived by the sense, but which can only be registered by the human spirit. In God, see 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9 to 16. The main message of Gothic architecture is God is transcendent and unreachable. So be away at his majesty. But such a message defies the message of the gospel, which say that God is very accessible, so much so that he has taken up residence inside of his people. The Protestant church building. In the 16th century, the Reformer inherited the aforementioned building tradition. In a short period of time, thousands of medieval cathedrals become their property as the local ruler who control those structures joined the Reformation. Most of the Reformers were former priests. Hence, they had been unwillingly conditioned by the thought pattern of medieval Catholicism. So even though the Reformer did some remodeling to their newly acquired church building, they made a little functional change in the architecture. Even if the Reformer wanted to bring radical change to the practice of the church, the mass were not ready for it. Martin Luther was quite clear that the church was not a building of an institution. Yet it would have been impossible for him to overturn more than a millennium of confusion on the subject. The central architectural change that the Reformer made reflected their theology. They made the pulpit the dominant center of the building rather than the altar table. The Reformation was built on the idea that people could not know God nor grow spiritually unless they hear preaching. Thus, when the Reformer inherited existing church building, they adapted them toward that end. The steeple. Ever since the inhabitants of Babel erected a tower to reach to the heaven, civilization have followed suit by building structure with pointed top. The Babylonians and Egyptians built obelisk and pyramid that reflected their belief that they were progressing toward immortality. When Greek philosophy and culture came along, the direction of architecture changed from upward and vertical to downward and horizontal. All of this suggested the Greek belief in democracy, human equality, and earthbound God. However, with the rise of the Roman Catholic Church, the practice of crowned building with pointed top remained. Toward the end of the Byzantine period, Catholic popes drew inspiration from the obelisks and ancient Egypt. As religious architecture entered the Romanesque period, points began to appear on the surface and corner of every cathedral built in the Roman Empire. This trend reached its pinnacle during the era of Gothic architecture with about circular construction of the cathedral at Saint-Denis. Unlike Greek architecture, the characteristic line of Gothic architecture was vertical to suggest thriving upward. By this time, all throughout Italy, towers began to appear near the entrance of church building. The tower housed bell to call the people to worship. These towers represent contact between heaven and earth. As the years passed, Gothic architecture got with their emphasis on verticality sought to add a tall spire to every tower. Spire in also called triple spire in the British Anglican term, were a symbol of man's aspiration to be united with his creator. In the century that followed, the tower grew taller and thinner. They eventually become a visual focal point for the architecture. They also reduced a number from the double-towered west walk to the singular spire that so characterized the Church of Normandy in Britain. In the year 1666, something happened that changed the course of tower architecture. A fire swept across the city of London and damaged most of its 87 church edifices. Sir Christopher Wren, in 1632 to 1723, was then commissioned to design all the churches in London, using his own stylistic innovation in modifying the Gothic spire of France and Germany. Wren created the modern steeple. From that point on, the steeple became a dominant feature of Anglo-British architecture. Later, the Puritans made their church building far simpler than their Catholic and Anglican predecessor, but they kept the steeple and brought it into the near world of America. The message of the steeple is one that contradicts the message of the New Testament. Christians do not have to reach into heaven to find God. He is here within the coming of Emmanuel. God is with us in Matthew chapter 1 verse 23. And with his resurrection, we have an indwelling Lord. The steeple defy this reality. The pupil. The earliest sermons were delivered from the bishop's chair on cathedral, which was positioned behind the altar. Later, the ambo, a raised desk on the side of the console from which Bible lessons were read, became the place where sermons were delivered. The ambo was taken from the Jews' synagogue. However, it has early roots in the reading desk and platform of Greco-Roman antiquity. John John Chrysostom, 347-407, was noted for making the ambo a place for preaching. As early as AD 250, the ambo was replaced by the pulpit. Cyprian of Carthage in 200 and 258 speak of placing the leader on the church into public office upon the pulpitum. Our word pulpit is derived from the Latin word pulpitum, which means a stage. The pulpitum or pulpit was propped up in the highest elevated place in the congregation. In time, the phrase to ascend the platum and ad pulpitum vivere become part of the religious vocabulary of the clergy.